In the quiet corners of history where the veil between the seen and the unseen grows thin, there emerges a figure whose words still echo with the weight of forgotten truths. He was neither prophet nor philosopher in the conventional sense, yet his revelations would challenge the very foundations of human understanding. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet of the 20th century, moved through the world with an extraordinary gift, one that allowed him to traverse the boundaries of time, space, and consciousness while in a deep trance. His readings, over 14,000 in number, spanned the realms of healing, reincarnation, ancient civilizations, and the nature of the soul itself. But among his most unsettling disclosures was one that few dared to confront: the existence of souls that did not originate from the divine light. Cayce's life was a paradox of humility and profound insight. Born in 1877 in rural Kentucky, he possessed no formal education in medicine or theology, yet his diagnoses and prescriptions delivered in a self-induced sleep baffled physicians and restored health to countless individuals. His accuracy in describing the human body's ailments, often without prior knowledge of the patient, earned him both reverence and skepticism. Yet it was not his medical prowess alone that set him apart. His readings delved into the Akashic records, an ethereal archive said to hold the collective memory of every soul's journey. Here he spoke of Atlantis and Lemuria, of past lives and cosmic cycles, weaving a tapestry of spiritual history that defied the linear narratives of science and religion. But it was his revelations about the soul that carried the most haunting implications. Cayce suggested that not every spirit walking the earth was forged in the image of divine creation. Some, he claimed, emerged from forces that stood in opposition to the very essence of life, beings born not of God's breath, but of a will that sought separation, chaos, and the shadow of existence itself. This idea was not entirely foreign to ancient wisdom. The Gnostics spoke of the demiurge, a false creator, who shaped a flawed material world. The Zoroastrians told of Angra Mainyu, the destructive spirit that countered Ahura Mazda's light. Even the Hindu texts hinted at asuras, beings of power who turned away from the divine order. Cayce's readings, however, did not merely echo these myths. They placed them within a living, breathing framework of human evolution, suggesting that these souls, these fragments of opposition, still move among us, their energy shaping the unseen currents of our world. One must pause here and consider the gravity of such a claim. If true, it reshapes not only our understanding of spirituality, but the very nature of existence. What does it mean for a soul to be untethered from the divine? How does its presence alter the fabric of human experience? And perhaps most unsettling of all, how might we recognize its influence in the shadows of our own lives? The answers, Cayce implied, lie not in fear, but in awareness. For to acknowledge the duality of creation is to step closer to the light that reveals all things. And so, we are left to wonder, in the grand tapestry of existence, where do these souls fit, and what do their stories tell us about the battle between light and shadow that has raged since the dawn of time? Long before the first civilizations etched their symbols into stone, before the pyramids pierced the heavens or the great rivers cradled the dawn of human memory, there existed an age untouched by recorded time. It was an epoch veiled in the mists of cosmic silence, where the boundaries between spirit and matter were not yet fixed, and the breath of creation still lingered over the unformed earth. Edgar Cayce's readings speak of this forgotten era, not as a void but as a crucible where forces beyond divine intention took shape. For while God's light birthed souls of harmony and purpose, something else stirred in the shadows of that primordial dawn. They emerged not from the radiant will of the Creator, but from the resistance to it. These beings were not forged in the sacred fire of divine love, nor were they woven from the fabric of celestial intent. Instead, they arose from the very opposition to creation itself, a rebellion not of fists and fury, but of absence, of a turning away. Cayce described them as echoes of a will that sought separation over unity, fragmentation over wholeness. They were not born, they congealed like mist forming in the cold spaces between stars, drawn together by a force that did not build but unmade. Where divine souls carried the imprint of purpose, these carried the weight of negation, a silent defiance against the order of existence. In this ancient formless time, the earth was not yet a stage for humanity's drama but a battleground of energies. The divine souls, still young in their journey, moved toward the light, drawn by an innate pull toward growth and connection. Yet these others, the uncreated, drifted like shadows cast by a light they could not comprehend. They did not seek to destroy, for destruction requires intent, and intent implies a spark of the divine. No, their nature was far more subtle. They persisted, not as agents of chaos, but as absences within creation, hollows where meaning should have been. They were the silence between notes in a cosmic hymn, the gaps in a tapestry where the threads had never been woven. What comma then did they represent? Cayce's visions suggest they were the embodiment of a question without an answer, a force that existed not to oppose God directly, but to reveal the necessity of choice. For if all souls were born of divine light, how would free will ever be tested? How would the contrast between unity and separation ever be known? They were the void against which creation defined itself, the darkness that made the light visible, and yet their presence was not without consequence. Like a stone cast into a still pond, their emergence sent ripples through the fabric of existence, subtly shaping the destiny of those who would come after. One must pause here and consider the weight of such a revelation. If these beings walked among the first humans, if their energy still lingers in the unseen currents of our world, what does that say about the nature of our own struggles? Are the shadows we face within and without merely echoes of that ancient division? And if so, what does it mean to live in a world where not all that exists was meant to be? The answers, Cayce implied, are not found in fear, but in the recognition that even the uncreated serve a purpose, to remind us that light is not the absence of dark, but the choice to turn toward it. In the unfathomable depths of time, long before the first civilizations etched their stories into stone, Edgar Cayce's readings spoke of a divergence so profound it reshaped the very fabric of existence. Here, in the shadows of creation's dawn, there emerged beings not born of divine breath, but of a will that stood in defiance, entities forged not by the light of the Creator, but by the void of separation itself. These were not souls as humanity would come to understand them, but echoes of a force that sought to unravel the harmony of the cosmos. Cayce's visions described them as remnants of an ancient rebellion, a fracture in the divine order that occurred when certain consciousnesses chose to turn away from unity. Unlike the souls crafted in the image of the divine, infused with purpose, love, and the potential for ascension, these beings were shaped by the absence of such light. They were, in essence, the embodiment of separation, a living paradox within creation. Their origins were not rooted in the sacred act of divine intention, but in the resistance to it, a choice that bound them to a different kind of existence, one marked by fragmentation rather than wholeness. Historical and spiritual traditions whisper of such entities in veiled terms, often describing them as the uncreated, the self-willed, or those who fell before the fall. Cayce's readings suggested they were not mere metaphors, but actual forces that persisted through the ages, weaving themselves into the tapestry of human experience. Their presence was not one of open confrontation, but of subtle influence, a quiet corruption of the divine spark within humanity. They did not seek to destroy outright, but to distort, to pull the threads of existence just enough to create discord, confusion, and the illusion of separation from the divine source. What makes this revelation so haunting is its implication. If such beings exist, their energy is not confined to the past. It lingers, a residual force that continues to shape human thought, emotion, and even the collective unconscious. They are the whisper in the ear of doubt, the shadow that darkens the path of spiritual awakening, the unseen hand that sows division where there could be unity. Cayce's insights challenge us to consider how much of our world's strife, our inner conflicts, and our sense of disconnection might be the legacy of these ancient, uncreated forces. And so one must ask, if these beings were never meant to be, why do they persist? What purpose do they serve in the grand design? Or are they merely the remnants of a cosmic error, a fracture that time has yet to heal? The answer may lie not in fear, but in awareness. For to recognize their influence is to reclaim the power of choice, to realign with the divine light that was always meant to guide us home. Throughout the ages, they have walked among us, not as mere observers, but as architects of unseen influence, weaving their essence into the very fabric of human civilization. Edgar Cayce's readings suggest these beings, born not of divine light but of the will of separation, did not remain confined to the shadows of prehistory. Instead, they embedded themselves within the structures of power, knowledge, and even spirituality, leaving traces that persist to this day. Their interaction with humanity was never passive. It was deliberate, a slow and calculated infusion of their energy into the collective psyche. History whispers of their presence in moments of great upheaval. Consider the ancient mysteries of Babylon, where esoteric knowledge flourished alongside the rise of empires. Cayce's insights hint that these beings often gravitated towards centers of occult wisdom, shaping doctrines that blurred the line between enlightenment and deception. They did not rule openly, but their influence seeped into the teachings of secret societies, the symbolism of sacred geometry, and the rituals of forgotten priesthoods. Their legacy is not one of conquest, but of subtle corruption, a gradual shifting of human perception toward duality, division, and the illusion of separation from the divine. Even in the rise of organized religion, their fingerprints can be found. The Gnostic texts, suppressed yet enduring, speak of archons, entities that sought to trap human souls in cycles of ignorance. Cayce's readings align with this notion, suggesting that these beings thrived in systems where fear and control overshadowed love and unity. They did not create these systems alone, but they amplified the tendencies already present in human nature, feeding the flames of dogma, superstition, and the belief that salvation could only be found through external authority. Their most profound effect, however, may lie not in grand historical narratives, but in the quiet, everyday struggles of the human spirit. They are the unseen force behind the whispers of doubt that arise in moments of faith, the sudden surge of anger that fractures relationships, the persistent sense of emptiness that lingers even in abundance. Their energy does not announce itself. It lingers in the spaces between thoughts, in the unexamined motives behind actions, in the collective shadows that humanity has yet to fully illuminate. And so one must ask, if these beings have shaped our past, how might they still be shaping our present? The answer lies not in fear, but in awareness, for only by recognizing the unseen can we begin to transcend its influence. The next time a thought arises that feels foreign to your truest self, pause, consider its origin. Is it yours, or is it an echo from a time before time? A remnant of an energy that still seeks to divide what was meant to be whole. The choice to see, to question, to reclaim your sovereignty begins now. The energy that emanates from these beings, those not born of divine light, carries a frequency unlike any other. Edgar Cayce's readings describe it as a resonance of dissonance, a vibration that does not harmonize with the natural order of creation. It is not inherently evil, for evil implies a corruption of the divine, and these entities were never of it. Instead, their energy is one of absence, a void where connection should be, a shadow where light might have been. This absence does not announce itself with fanfare. It seeps, subtle and persistent, into the cracks of human consciousness, shaping thoughts and emotions in ways that often go unnoticed. Modern spiritual traditions, from esoteric wisdom to indigenous cosmologies, speak of such energies under different names: archonic forces, thought forms, or even the hungry ghosts of Buddhist lore. What unites these interpretations is the recognition that certain influences do not nourish the soul, but instead feed on its fragmentation. Cayce's insights align with this. These beings thrive in environments of division, where fear, doubt, and isolation take root. Their energy manifests in collective anxieties, in the unshakable sense that something is missing, in the compulsions that drive humanity towards self-destruction, war, greed, the relentless pursuit of power over unity. Yet their influence is not absolute. The same energy that can distort can also reveal. For those who learn to discern its presence, it becomes a mirror, reflecting the duality within all things. The tension between light and its absence is not a battle to be won, but a lesson to be understood. Cayce suggested that these beings, in their very opposition, serve a purpose. They test the resilience of the human spirit, forcing it to choose again and again between separation and wholeness. Consider, then the energies that move through your own life. When have you felt the pull of something that does not uplift, but instead drains? When have you witnessed patterns of behavior, your own or others, that seem to arise from an unseen source? The invitation is not to fear these forces, but to observe them, to trace their origins in the quiet moments of reflection. For in understanding the nature of what was not created by God, we come to know more deeply what was, and what we as souls are called to become. The question lingers: if these energies shape the world in unseen ways, how might your awareness of them reshape the world in turn? And so one must ask, if these souls were not forged in the light of the divine, why then do they persist in the tapestry of human existence? Edgar Cayce's readings suggest their presence is no accident of cosmic drift, but a deliberate thread woven into the grand design of spiritual evolution. They are not here to corrupt, as some might fear, but to serve as mirrors, reflecting back to humanity the shadows it must confront to ascend. Consider this: the soul's journey is not one of passive enlightenment, but of active engagement with duality. These beings, born of separation rather than unity, embody the very resistance that forces the human spirit to question, to struggle, and ultimately, to choose. Their energy, though foreign to the divine spark, becomes the catalyst for growth. Without the friction of opposing forces, how would one recognize the warmth of grace? Without the contrast of discord, how would harmony reveal its depth? Cayce's insights imply that their existence is a cosmic lesson in balance, a reminder that even the most wayward energies have a role in the soul's awakening. Yet their purpose extends beyond mere contrast. They are the keepers of forgotten wisdom, the guardians of truths too heavy for untested hearts. Their presence challenges humanity to look beyond the veil of simple morality, to understand that spiritual evolution is not about rejecting the dark, but integrating it. They walk among us to teach resilience, to demonstrate that even energies born of separation can be transmuted when met with conscious awareness. In this way, they become unwitting teachers, guiding us toward a deeper comprehension of free will and the consequences of choice. To dismiss them as mere anomalies is to overlook the profound invitation they extend to examine the nature of the soul itself. If some spirits arise from forces beyond divine creation, what does that reveal about the boundaries of existence? What does it say about the soul's capacity to evolve, regardless of origin? The answers lie not in fear, but in curiosity, in the willingness to gaze into the abyss, and recognize that even there, meaning can be found. And so the question lingers, not as a riddle to solve, but as a doorway to step through. What if their presence is not a flaw in creation, but a necessary shadow in the light? What if, by understanding their role, we unlock a deeper truth about our own? The choice remains to turn away, or to lean into the mystery, and in doing so to discover what lies beyond the edges of belief. They move among us, unseen yet felt, a whisper in the crowd, a shadow at the edge of perception. Edgar Cayce's readings did not merely describe these souls as anomalies of creation. He warned that their presence was woven into the very fabric of human history, altering the course of civilizations, beliefs, and even the unseen battles of the spirit. To dismiss them as mere myth is to overlook the patterns they leave behind. Patterns that once recognized demand a reckoning with the nature of one's own spiritual path. Consider the documented phenomena of walk-ins, a concept Cayce himself alluded to in his readings. These are souls who by choice or force displace the original inhabitant of a human body, stepping into a life not their own. Cases such as that of Phyllis Schlemmer, a woman whose sudden shift in personality, artistic ability, and even handwriting was meticulously recorded in the 1970s, aligned disturbingly with Cayce's descriptions of souls borrowing physical vessels. Her story, corroborated by psychologists and metaphysicians alike, raises a haunting question: if a soul can be replaced, what does that reveal about the fragility or the resilience of human identity? And if such replacements occur, how many among us are not who they once were? Then there are the collective energies, those invisible tides that sweep through societies, inciting wars, revolutions, or sudden collapses of moral compass. Cayce spoke of thought forms and group souls, entities that feed on human emotion, amplifying fear, greed, or fanaticism, until they manifest as historical turning points. The rise of totalitarian regimes in the 20th century, studied by historians like Eric Voegelin, bears eerie parallels to Cayce's warnings of non-divine influences embedding themselves in human structures. Voegelin's work on political religions describes how ideologies can become possessed by a demonic force, driving masses toward destruction, not unlike Cayce's vision of souls born from separation, seeking to pull humanity into their own void. Yet awareness is the first alchemy. Those who study Cayce's readings often report a heightened sensitivity to the energies around them, a sudden clarity in discerning the intentions behind words, the weight of a room's atmosphere, or the inexplicable draw towards certain people or places. This is not paranoia. It is the awakening of an ancient dormant sense, one that early humans relied upon to navigate a world teeming with unseen forces. The question then becomes, what does one do with this knowledge? Does it mean retreat? Hardly. Cayce's work suggests that these souls, though not of divine origin, are bound by the same cosmic laws as all existence. They too must evolve or dissolve. Their presence is not a curse but a catalyst, forcing humanity to confront its own shadows, to refine its discernment, and to choose, consciously, which energies it will feed. The spiritual journey, then, is not about avoidance but engagement, learning to recognize the signature of a soul's origin, whether it resonates with the harmony of creation or the dissonance of separation. And so one must ask, when you feel the pull of an inexplicable emotion, when a stranger's gaze lingers a second too long, or when history seems to repeat itself with eerie precision, could it be the echo of a soul that was never meant to be? The answer lies not in fear, but in the courage to look deeper. For in the act of seeing, one reclaims the power to choose which forces will shape the world, and which will fade into the oblivion they were born from. Yet even the most profound revelations must endure the crucible of scrutiny. Edgar Cayce's assertions that souls exist beyond the divine framework challenge not only theological doctrine, but the very foundations of human belief. To the academic mind, such claims are met with measured hesitation. Historians and scholars of religion often question the empirical basis of Cayce's readings, noting that his visions, though meticulously documented, emerge from a trance state, a realm where subjective experience blurs the line between revelation and imagination. Skeptics argue that without verifiable, repeatable evidence, these insights remain anecdotal, a product of the subconscious rather than cosmic truth. But to dismiss them entirely would be to overlook the persistent threads woven through humanity's spiritual tapestry. Ancient texts, from the Gnostic Gospels to the Zoroastrian scriptures, whisper of beings born from shadow, entities that defy the divine order. The Kabbalah speaks of the Klipot, shells of impurity that cling to creation, while Hindu cosmology acknowledges the Asuras, demigods of chaos who oppose the gods. Cayce's visions, then, do not stand in isolation but echo a timeless cross-cultural unease. That creation is not monolithic, that within its grand design forces of opposition have always played their part. The tension between faith and reason is not new. For centuries, mystics and philosophers have grappled with the nature of the soul, its origin, its purpose, its fate. Cayce's readings, though radical, invite a deeper interrogation. If the soul is not solely a divine construct, what does that reveal about free will, about the nature of evil? And if these beings walk among us, as he claimed, how might their presence explain the inexplicable, those moments of profound dissonance, when the world feels heavier than it should? Yet the skeptic's question lingers: if these souls are real, why do they remain unseen? The answer may lie not in proof, but in perception. Cayce himself suggested that such truths are revealed only to those who seek them, not through dogma, but through inner awakening. Perhaps the greatest challenge is not to believe or disbelieve, but to hold space for the unknown, to recognize that spirituality, like history, is a living dialogue between what is seen and what is felt. So one must ask, what if the doubt itself is part of the journey? What if the tension between belief and skepticism is the very crucible in which wisdom is forged? The choice remains not to accept blindly, nor to reject outright, but to engage, to question, and to listen to the whispers that linger at the edges of understanding. For in the end, the search for truth is not a destination, but a sacred act of becoming. If one dares to peer beyond the veil of conventional belief, Edgar Cayce's revelations do not merely challenge the origins of the soul, they reshape the very foundation of humanity's spiritual destiny. For if there exist souls not forged in the light of the divine, but born instead from the shadows of separation, then the path forward demands more than passive acknowledgement. It requires a conscious evolution, a collective awakening to the energies that have long moved unseen among us. The implications are profound, for they compel us to ask, how might the recognition of these opposing forces not divide, but instead unite humanity in a deeper understanding of its own duality? For in understanding the souls that walk beside us, whether born of light or shadow, we reclaim the power to shape our collective future. The choice is ever present. Will we cling to the illusion of purity, or will we dare to weave a new narrative, one where all energies are acknowledged, all lessons embraced, and all paths, no matter how winding, lead back to the source? The journey begins with a single step, the willingness to see beyond the surface, to question, to reflect, and to act from a place of enlightened love. The future of humanity may well depend on it. And so we arrive at the threshold of Edgar Cayce's most profound and unsettling revelation, one that does not merely challenge the boundaries of spiritual understanding, but redraws them entirely. His readings spoke of souls untouched by the divine breath, entities born not of light, but of the shadow cast by creation's earliest defiance. These were not lost children of God, but beings forged in the crucible of separation itself, their existence a testament to the duality woven into the fabric of reality. To grasp the weight of this truth is to stand at the precipice of a spiritual paradox. If not all souls are of divine origin, then what does that reveal about the nature of free will, the purpose of suffering, and the very essence of redemption? Cayce's insights compel us to confront an ancient question with modern urgency. If these souls walk among us still, what role do they play in the unfolding drama of human evolution? His readings suggest they are not mere interlopers, but catalysts, mirrors reflecting the unresolved fractures within our collective consciousness. Their presence, he implied, is neither accidental nor malevolent in the simplistic sense, but a necessary counterpoint to the divine harmony we so ardently seek. They challenge us to discern, to question, and ultimately, to choose with greater awareness. For in a world where light and shadow are inextricably linked, true spiritual mastery lies not in denial, but in the courage to engage with the full spectrum of existence, being. Yet the significance of Cayce's revelations extends beyond the metaphysical. They invite us to reconsider the very foundations of our beliefs, about good and evil, about destiny and choice, about the boundaries of compassion itself. If some souls arise from forces opposed to creation, does that not also imply that redemption is not a birthright, but a journey? And if so, what does that journey demand of us? Cayce's work does not offer easy answers, but it does provide a map, one that charts the terrain of the soul with unflinching honesty. Now, the question turns inward. Have you ever encountered an energy so profound it defied explanation? A presence that seemed to exist beyond the conventional realms of light or darkness? Cayce's teachings urge us to listen, not just to the whispers of the divine, but to the silences in between, where the most ancient truths reside. Perhaps the next step in your spiritual evolution begins with a single courageous act, the willingness to sit with the unknown, to embrace the discomfort of questions that have no tidy resolution. Let this be your invitation. Explore the edges of your own understanding. Seek out the experiences that unsettle you, for it is there that growth awaits. The path to wisdom is not paved with certainties, but with the humility to acknowledge that some mysteries are meant to be lived, not solved. And in that living, in the daily practice of awareness, discernment, and open-hearted inquiry, you may find that the most profound revelations are not those handed down from the past, but those you uncover within yourself. The journey continues. Will you walk it,